All right, next we're going to go through the defensive line, starting with Notre Dame's first commit along the defensive line in the 2022 class, Tyson Ford. I believe he's the number 105 player in the 2022 class from St. Louis. John Burroughs picked Notre Dame over Oklahoma, Georgia, and Missouri when he pledged the Irish earlier this year. So, Mike, what do you see on film when you watch Tyson Ford?
I see a three technique, first of all. So, I mean, he's listed as a defensive end, right, Mike?
Yeah, listed as a strong side end, so that three technique is the shade just outside of the guard and between the tackle. Correct, Mike?
Correct. So that's an interior offensive lineman, depending on the front you're running. He could line up over the nose in an over front, but yeah, he typically plays outside shade of the guard. Um, but if he's already Mike 6'5", 260,
Nine.
that's going to be he's going to
269.
be a perfect. Okay, 270. This kid's going to be a freaking problem at three technique. And the comp, Mike, for me
Love it.
is Chris Jones. If you've seen Chris
Ooh.
Jones, the defensive tackle for the Chiefs, and if the more you watch Tyson Ford, like the Chris Jones comparison is almost blatantly obvious. Super powerful kid. I think Tyson looks at himself as an athlete. Like I kind of looked him up on Twitter trying to find his film. He's got like speed freak in terms of the top of his Twitter. I think he looks at himself as an athlete, which I love to see. But this kid's got just raw power, crazy length. Um, but yeah, that this kid's inevitably going to grow into a ridiculous three technique.
Okay. And the film we are watching here is senior year. So we will get to junior year film in just a minute. Mike, switching
He
over
could.
the AirPods. You
No,
good, Mike?
yeah, you're fine. I'm just
Okay.
going to keep running on. So I look at him as a defensive tackle. I absolutely think that in a three-man front, he could play a defensive end and a five technique and just head up on an offensive lineman. But what's interesting, I think, innately with Tyson Ford, I think he wants to make plays. You understand?
Sure.
And particularly, he wants to get to the quarterback. So, like, like early on in his career, and this isn't a knock, but I feel like he could be a small liability in a run game because he's going to want to get upfield so often that he's going to create like bigger running lanes.
Moving to junior year film now, just so you know, Mike.
Okay, this is a random thought, but like the longer like you stick around football, there's like certain markers for like athleticism. Tyson Ford's like looks to be on film slightly pigeon-toed, like you could see it right there, slightly pigeon-toed, and it's just like if I had a kid, uh, sometimes kids that are a little bit bow-legged or a little bit pigeon-toed, for whatever reason, they're just athletic. They've got
Hmm.
more bounce to them. It's like kids having thin ankles. Like you see a kid with a thin ankle, you're like, oh, it's a good athlete. So it's just something that kind of jumped out to me. Does play a little bit high at times, but just the motor and just like again, just like the natural power that he has. Um, yeah, it's this kid's going to be a problem. And if he's already at 270 pounds and he can keep his motor, stay humble, the sky's really the limit for this kid. Because like I said, yeah, that's the comp to me as like a Chris Jones, just because he's so long. He's so long.
I think if you're calling a defensive lineman a problem, that's a pretty good compliment. That's a pretty good compliment. Another problem in the DMV area at Chantilly High School, Aiden Gobaira, thin, but he looks like another problem on film for offenses. So, he's maybe looks a little bit longer than Tyson Ford. Um, seems like he's got a frame to build, Mike, where he's, probably comes in as a
I
weak
don't care
side
about
end.
any of that stuff.
Okay.
I'm telling you, dude, like, so you could just pause. Well, the next time you see him in a 3-point stance, Mike, just go ahead and pause it for me. Like, I'm the least, and again, training high level kids, I'm the least. Okay, you can pause that. Just let me talk for 2 seconds, dude.
Yep.
Like, I'm the least concerned with like weight for the sake of weight. Like, oh, if Aiden Gobaira is only 230 pounds, he needs to be 255 before he can play. I couldn't care less. These kids are like 18 years old, let Mother Nature do its thing over the next 12 to 24 months, and naturally they're just going to put on weight. They're going to grow into their bodies and maintain and retain the athleticism that made them a big shot recruit in the first place. Okay. So situationally, I think you can play Aiden early in his career, specifically because he has some polish in terms of pass rush acumen, like his usage of his hands. Real quick, Mike, the point I wanted to make is this will change once he gets to Notre Dame. But you see how long his stance is. So if you look at his hand that's on the ground to like the toes of his the toes of his feet, that's a yard and a half. And then watch his first step and then pause it. First step and then pause it, Mike. See, his first step doesn't even replace where his hand was. So he hasn't gone anywhere yet. You understand what I'm saying, Mike?
Sure.
Like he hasn't gotten upfield. So I would imagine Coach Elston, once he gets him to Notre Dame, will get him to kind of condense his stance a little bit tighter of a stance, and that his first step will actually gain some ground, so he can climb on that offensive lineman. But you'll see, I think this is a move where he does a double swipe. It's perfect, yeah. So you can run that back one last time. Watch his hand usage. You don't see this often with high school kids. See, and pass rush is just getting your hips beyond or past the offensive lineman's hips. But this kid's worked on some pass rush moves, which to me is going to allow him to play early. And he's got a motor.
He and Tyson Ford just seem like these long athletes with extremely high motors. Ford's got the better size right now, but here he is at middle linebacker. Gobaira seems like he is more technically advanced. Gobaira also has a lot more sacks at the high school level up, and Ford, I think, had like 4 sacks in like 15 games junior and senior year. So I don't know how much you take of that, but Ford, it seems like he's a lot more of a run stopper in high school, which may even go to more of him being a 3-tech. But still, both of these guys seem like the types of athletes that Mike Elston just wants. Big, long guys with high motors, and they're athletic. I mean, that it just seems like they're perfect Mike Elston fits.
Yeah, that's what we talked about last night with the offense. At a certain point in time, and we'll get into this evening. Watch the moves here, folks, because he's got a great arm over, and he has like a double swipe. He's fun to watch just because as like somebody that teaches or tries to teach this to kids. And even there, nice hand placement, even at, whatever he is, 225, like he understands how to use his hands. And that's like
it's the number one thing.
It's the number one thing. And like the further you get with football from college to the NFL, technique wins. And that's how a guy that's, like a guy like, they can play until their late 30s because their technique is flawless at that point, right? The technique wins. They're not the athlete they once were, but they still have perfect technique. So I'm really excited about this kid. For whatever reason, I wasn't like that stoked to watch his film. I was like, I was a little bit just inherently wanting to be critical of Gobaira, but I'm a big fan. I came away a big fan. My comp, Mike, is Max Crosby, defensive end for the Oakland Raiders. Super long, not a crazy athlete. I don't think Aiden's going to beat a ton of people in like a foot race. Like just, he's not like freaky athletic, but he definitely a technician. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, again, I think you could plug him in early situationally in a pass rush scenario. We talked about improving his first step, switching up his stances a little bit. And I said here, I don't care to see him bulk up so much.
Okay.
The length and the bendability, we're going to say, that's part of what makes him special. So really high ceiling, I think, for Aiden.
Okay. All right, moving along. The third defensive line signee in the Fighting Irish 2022 class, Donovan Hinish, of course, the younger brother of Kurt Hinish, who will play his final game in a Notre Dame uniform against Oklahoma State. I think this was junior film, didn't have any senior year film. He's already been committed. Don't care about putting film out on Huddle. Listed about 6'2", 260-ish. I wonder, Mike, if his last name wasn't Hinish, if he would be on scholarship at Notre Dame, but if Notre Dame feels like they know a ton about this kid because of that, and they know what they're getting, and if they're getting a Kurt Hinish 2.0, I think Notre Dame takes that 7 days a week. So, what do you think about that, Mike, and watching his film?
He's not what we need, in my opinion. IMO, in my opinion. You like, again, we're talking about beating elite teams, and that you want some more size on the interior lineman. That's just kind of a given for like championship level football. You could run that play back against the red team here, Mike. So I went into this kind of being critical that, like, oh, that maybe there's some nepotism or what have you because of who his brother is and what Kurt's done. But watch this play. Like, this is a super flat back by Donovan. Great use of the hands. Look at that reduce right. That's
That's
perfect.
good.
Way to pause it, Mike.
Yeah, you like that?
So, like, yeah, I love this because, granted, he might be like not quite the athlete or not just a specimen that a Tyson Ford is, but this dude understands football. Go back one more time, Mike. And conversely, the yin and the yang of football. Watch the right guard steps underneath himself, so it looks like he's playing against Cade Madden in here, but
Oh,
like
jeez.
steps underneath himself, and then Donovan takes that width step, and then also takes away his blocking surface. Like, Donovan's a really good football player. And again, he understands what he's doing. He has really good feet. I'm not saying they're like quick feet, but he has good footwork. Maybe is a better way of saying it. Um, to me, is like recruiting class wise, he's like the equivalent of what Ashton Craig is on the offensive side of the ball. Just a tough dude, gets it. You need guys on your team like that. Should be a really good rotational player. But yeah, I would say he's in the same sort of vein as Aiden Gobaira in terms of like uh, the technique.
Sure.
So let's not discount him whatsoever. I think he understands football, understands blocking schemes. I just wish, me personally, I want more size.
Well,
Um,
is it fair to say if Notre Dame was relying on him to be a 3 year, 2 or 3 year starter, then they'd be in trouble? Like as an every down player. But if he's a rotational piece,
yeah,
plays 20
absolutely.
snaps a game, that he's got his place.
Yeah, and he's a little bit undersized, I guess,
Oh, he
but I
is.
do think so. I mean, like a Howard Cross is undersized, but I feel like that based off of Donovan's and that was a great play there too in terms of getting his hips around the blocker. But yeah, this I think it's this play. So he just kind of gets his hips by, and that he's not just trying to bully people like so many of these 5-star high end D1 recruits. They just beat everybody with God given ability and size and power. Whereas like you can see Donovan work some technique. So I think that he could be a rotational guy, in particular in like early down situations.
I need to
Just
replay
because I
that
think,
one, Mike. I think he got triple teamed here. Look at this. That's three
yeah,
guys on Donovan Hinish right here, and he
yeah.
still he still gets out and makes the
See,
tackle.
but see, like, and he doesn't get moved because he plays with such a wide base. And we talked about that yesterday, like playing on the insteps of your feet, and he's got real nice balance. And that's where you're talking about like, well, he's Kurt Hinish, but a better athlete. So I went into this again, sort of watching his film with an eye roll, thinking like, okay, this kid's just got a scally because of who his brother is, and I came away impressed, um, again with the technique. And I think another cool factor is you'd figure based off of his relationship with Kurt that he might come in with maybe a leg up in terms of understanding the defense and what Coach Elston's going to look for out of him. That's got to help him just overall in terms of his development. So good player. I'm excited about him.